Welcome to part two of our four-part series on general employment permits here with Emma from Nugent Solicitors. Emma, am I saying that correctly?
My name, yes, Emer, 100% perfectly, and Nugent.
Yes, thank goodness. It's just suddenly come up to me. I could be saying this like many other Irish word, and it's it doesn't always come across from the end of my mouth what it comes into my head as. So,
Nope, 100% correct.
perfect. So we're going to be looking at part two of the series here. It's a four-part series that we've got for you on everything concerning general employment permits. If you want to go back and have a look at part one, feel free to do so. But now we're going to be talking about the changes that were introduced in May this year to specific job categories. Some careers are now eligible that weren't eligible previously, and Emma is going to take us through all of that to give you guys all the information that you need so you can make decisions based on accurate facts. Emma, thank you so much for being here and having a chat with us on this. Have you seen a lot of careers that have now become eligible that weren't eligible previously?
Yes, I that's what I was saying if you watch part one, is that I feel that the types of role and the number of roles that are eligible for employment permits is expanding. I would say it is still restricted. It is restrictive because there
Mm.
are a lot of jobs that are ineligible, and that's the kind of harsh reality of it is that, if your skill set is in a particular area and it's still ineligible, unless you have a partner or a spouse who maybe has different skills, like it is difficult because the truth is there are some people who are excluded from the general work permit system because of the career history and the skill set that they have. But in May this year, they expanded the general employment permit system, I think, quite extensively. They have now 9 extra roles that are eligible for general employment permits. And you probably come across this as well, Vicky, but there's some roles that are eligible for work permits, but they're subject to a quota,
Yes.
meaning we will grant general employment permits for these roles, but not, indefinitely. Just when we filled a gap in the labour market, then we'll close it off. One thing I find very confusing about I don't know if you've come across this before, the roles that are subject to quotas. In my in my understanding or my experience, they don't publish where they're at with the quotas.
Yes, they don't.
So I find that very confusing. Or people should be able to know there's still space left, or we're 50% full, because I would always be concerned that people go to all of this effort and by the time their application has got to that the quota is full. I think that's really unfair.
Especially with the processing times that it takes and getting the employer to be interested for the duration of it.
Yeah, like if an employer's made a commitment to you and you've made a commitment to them, and then at the end of it, you're told the quota is full. I haven't actually seen it happen, but it's just something that concerns me is that they don't publish, because they do publish the processing times. They update it quite regularly.
Mm.
I feel why couldn't they kind of say, here we are with the quota cases? I don't think it would be that hard to give that data.
It would be great. And people forget as well that there's a lot of information that you have for the application.
Yeah.
So people go about it the wrong way. You touched on it in part one there as well with the advertising that needs to be done for the application and everything. People have go for the interviews first a lot of the times because they'll hear of someone who's in Ireland, for instance, who works at a company and the company is looking for someone to fill a role. And it's like, oh, I've got a friend in South Africa, or my brother in South Africa can do this job and everything. They start the conversation, the interview is had, and only then do they get onto the advertising.
Yes. And I find as well, maybe you offer the service, I don't know, Vicky, but the advertising is crucial in terms of the wording,
Yes.
because the whole point really is, you know, the Department of Enterprise has to be satisfied. There's no Irish or EU national to do this job, and that's why the work permit is being
Yes.
granted, and that's why you have to do the advertising. But my kind of experience of how they deal with that is that they like look at your advert with a fine tooth comb, and they're like, because they have the labour market needs access or labour market needs test, and it says
Yes.
your advert needs to say X, Y, and Z. Maybe you have the same
We
experience, but it's like it has to be that exactly with
we
no,
do
yeah.
have we do the map my move sessions that we have where we look specifically at what the wording needs to be for that as the SOC code in
Yes.
terms of the application, what your position as a because it is like you say, people tend to think that they're one thing, but they come across as something else. And if it doesn't match up, it doesn't match up. you know, you in your mind it could be the same thing and it's not. And the same with the advertising. If it's not exactly what it needs to be, it's very heartbreaking when you go through that entire process just for it to be shut down.
Yes, it is those two aspects to it, the SOC code, the advertising. It's technical, it takes time to figure it out, and then you just have to do it exactly to the letter. But if you're able to do that, then you have a very good chance of succeeding if you've met all of the other requirements.
Mm.
And the advertising, I think, has become a little bit more user friendly. In the past, you used to have to put it in printed media. I don't know if you remember that time where
Yes.
I've always felt that was a little bit crazy that that's what had.
Redundant.
Yeah. At least now with the new labour market access, you do two online platforms, the government kind of funded one, and then any other, Indeed or anything like that.
Okay.
But I definitely find that the advertising has to be to the letter in order for everything to go through. And up on the screen there, we have the roles that are now eligible for employment permits, and it's kind of a mixture of industries. I find a lot of construction employments are becoming eligible for employment permits. So if anyone has experience or skills as a tradesperson,
Mm.
it does seem now that most trades, construction employments, the majority of those employments now seem to be eligible for employment permits. It would be a general employment permit, in recognition of the amount of construction that needs to happen in Ireland and building houses and so on. But there's a mixture of roles there as well. You can see like in dentistry, pharmacy. And that's the other thing, it's such a mixed,
Mm.
there's such a wide array of skill sets and industries that are open to general employment permits. So it does kind of help a lot of people.
Do you find that with the general work permit, with the occupations that are now eligible, that there are occupations on the general work permit that's similar to with the critical skills where you need to be registered with a specific body in order to actually qualify for it that people also aren't aware of?
I think that for me, that comes up more with the critical skills
Mm.
because the registration, well, I suppose security, um, but I'm not sure if security is eligible. I'd need to look into that, but they need a PIN code. But I think the kind of registration with the professional bodies does seem, for me anyway, to come up more with the critical skills occupations. I was looking at something the other day for somebody, it was an optician.
Yes?
Um, and they actually have to be registered, they're a health professional, but that's actually been made eligible for critical skills. But it is fundamental that if you're a part of a professional body, that you have the PIN to confirm your registration. And that is
Mm.
something that people need to get in place. So they might have even a full process before all of this to get
Yes.
recognized with the professional body. And that's a whole other aspect to it. And some of the roles, particularly the ones I have here that were already eligible, but the quota has been renewed. That includes like hotel managers, bar managers, catering managers.
Okay.
But one thing that people need to be careful of as well is that they're like, yes, I have that skill set. I have work experience in that area. But some of these roles have very specific criteria as to your level of qualification and as to your level of years of experience. So sometimes it might seem, oh, that job is eligible, I have that skill set, but then there's an additional hurdle. Do you have the relevant qualification at the relevant level? And you can check your qualifications. Maybe you assist in this regard, Vicky, but the QQI recognition of qualifications, and you have to make sure that the qualification you have is at whatever level is required.
Yes.
Yeah.
It that will be something that will be covered through the map my moves conversations that we have. That's essentially it's an hour-long conversation where Megan sits and goes through everything in terms of, and the the map my moves is not just when you're looking for specific information. A lot of it is around being emotionally up for the move because there's a lot
Yes.
of things that come with it. General work permits, and again, we'll touch on it when we get to the family reunification. There is the separation period before you can apply for your family to join you, and then the waiting period for the visas for them to join you once that is complete. Things like that. It's very important that you speak to someone who has gone through the process or understands that process, because there is a lot in it in terms of the emotional preparedness for these things. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done prior to you getting to Ireland that you need to get from South Africa. There's a lot of things that you need to have in Ireland once you're here. And the Map My Moves help with those conversations so that you have everything on a ready. if you know what hurdle lays in front of you and you know that you have what you need to get around it, when you get to the point that that hurdle hits you, it's not overwhelming. It's just another step in the process. And that's what those sessions help with as well.
Yes, and I think we'll touch on it later with the visas and the family reunification, but it's definitely true to say there's two massive hurdles now, which is the family reunification visas are so badly delayed.
Yes.
It's the worst situation in terms of delay that I've seen in probably ever, actually.
Yes.
Um, we can try our best to expedite it, to put pressure on the department to expedite it, but it's definitely a big hurdle and it's unbelievably stressful for people. And the second part of it then is you have to have a certain salary to get a general employment permit. And I
Yes.
think this is really unfair how they've gone about the new revised family reunification policy document. The salary might be enough to qualify you to come and work in Ireland, but it might not qualify you to be joined by your family because
Yes.
there's such a gap now between the salary threshold for the work permit and the salary threshold for family reunification. And I think that's really, really unfair.
Yes, especially if you look at the difference between a family with two children versus a family with three children. In terms of what salaries are in Ireland, that's quite a jump
Yes.
to be able to come over with two kids. And also with the revision every year. Now, you'd be able to give us more information here, Emma. When they revise it, if the amount has gone up that is required for the salary, does your salary need to meet the new threshold when you renew your work permit, or do they renew it on your previous salary?
My understanding of that, because that, not to skip on, but that family, so we have three family reunification policies, one from 2016,
Mm,
and then we have the November 2025, and now we have the June 2026. But the position is that general employment permit holders were always asked to meet a threshold. It's basically to disqualify you from working family payment. And
yes.
that's always been the case. But the difficulty is the working family payment threshold has gone up so much. The way I've always worked these cases is that it should be assessed as to what that threshold was on the day that you submitted your application.
Okay.
And that always was the way for many, many years. Say you applied in 24, we always base it off what was the threshold for working family payment on that date.
Okay.
And it shouldn't be that then people, because it would always have been the case then that people would have ended up being disqualified because it takes them a year or a year and a half to process your application, and then you get prejudiced because the salary increase has got or the threshold has gone up.
Yes.
That it always worked that way. But
And
as far as I'm aware, it doesn't say anywhere that that's how it works. And I do know that there's more of a harshness than there used to be. But I would always be of the view you can't be prejudiced because it takes them a year
mm,
and a half. And that's always been my experience of it. So I would still say if you meet it on the day you apply, I would just continue on the basis that you qualify. Now, if they bring it up in a refusal, we'll have a lot to say on appeal about that.
mm.
I don't think it should be this goal that you have to reach that is ever changing and you don't know what the new threshold is going to be
Because
because,
that
yeah,
it does seem like that is the case at the moment with because it previously the increases weren't as frequent and as big as what they are at the moment. Like there was a very long period where it was 32,000 and it just stayed at that. And then the there was the slight increases for the family that came over. This is the first time since last year that we've seen that the jumps have been as big as what they are.
yeah, I actually couldn't believe it when it came out on the 12th that I read it and I've been going through it because I'm working on different applications and now it applies for new applications. But say you're applying for two children, if you meet the work permit salary of 36,605, you're not short of needing double that.
Mm,
So it's really difficult in that sense. Now, you can still, of course, apply if you don't meet it, but you're in for a long road of may never, it's possible you could succeed, but it's more likely they're going to refuse and you have to do an
yes.
appeal and there's no guarantee. And that's unbelievably stressful for people. But I definitely think, yes, it's really noticeable, the jump in the
Mm.
salary threshold. It's really noticeable.
Just something completely off the cuff here with regards to general work permits that people also need to consider is that if you qualify, if your career is on the critical skills visa list, but you don't meet the threshold of the salary and you don't have a degree that comes along with it, just remember that that comes with the general work permit eligibility as well. And there is some other perks that come along with it for having been on the critical skills list. So that's
Yeah.
something to look into as well, because there are things that come with it. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the advertising is affected by that if
Yeah,
it needs to be
you don't have to advertise if you're on the critical skills. If your occupation is critical skills, but you're doing general because maybe the contract is a year, you have
yes.
to have a 2-year contract to do critical skills. Or as you say, maybe you don't have a relevant degree. If you're kind of not able to go down the critical skills route despite having a critical skill occupation, you would do a general, but there's a big perk that you don't have to do the advertising.
Mm,
Because as you were saying, in terms of processing times, if you have to do the advertising, which for most cases you do, it's 28 days. You have to let that run. You can't apply for the permit in those 28 days. And then after and it has to be not older than 90 days. So if an employer
mm.
says, oh, I've already done the advertising, you have to check,
When?
well, when, and also a lot of the times it was done, but it wasn't done with the specific requirements in mind. So it's not acceptable. In my experience, it's quite rare that previous advertising that was done without the view to getting a work permit would actually work. In my experience, most of the time it just has to be done.
Mm,
Then you've got 28 days, then you've got your 6 to 7 weeks. And if you're considering applying for a general employment permit, the new portal, the Department of Enterprise portal that you submit the applications on, it is fairly user friendly. I don't know if you've used it, Vicky, but there is actually 3 portals for every application. So, the applicant has to have a portal. If they have an agent, if you're using a solicitor or anything like that, they have to have a portal. And then the employer has to have a portal. And it's a good idea to kind of get those portals set up for yourself and for your employer, especially for the employer, because they have to get verified. They have to give their tax documents. It can take a little while to get verified,
yes.
but that has to be in place. And the verification has to be in place before you can actually upload the application. So if you're waiting the 28 days for the advertising, it's like really good idea to make sure that's done in that time frame as well. And then you're not waiting another 2 weeks after that before you can actually access the portals.
Mm,
It's one thing I've come across with the portals. The data now, like they ask you a lot less questions, and the documents, if you compare it to the visas, it's not overly document heavy. You need
okay.
you need your contract. It's a good idea to look over the contract, because with the salary, another thing that slips people up sometimes is they have the salary based on a 40-hour week. I see that a lot. But it's actually, there's a minimum hourly rate. So you have to
Yes.
meet this threshold based on 39 hours a week. But if you're working 40 hours a week, your salary has to be up pro rata the extra hours. So it is a
Okay.
good idea to just kind of check the contract. Like, it's not a pro forma contract that says 40 hours or something, because
Yes.
that's always the kind of things that slip people up. And then it's really deflating because you'd have to go back to the start.
Oh, and
Uh,
it's such a small increment that would make at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because I always see employment permits kind of refused for like bureaucratic reasons like that, like something really small that, but the employer would have agreed to if it was just caught before the application went in,
Yes.
or the advertising slightly wrong. Because if you meet the salary and your job is eligible and you're suitable to do it, and you've done the advertising, there's minimal reasons why you would get refused. I kind of
Mm,
see the refusals come in two kind of trends. One is something just like, there was a mistake like in the advert or the contract, or the other type of refusal, which is more difficult, is the Department of Enterprise are like, I don't agree with your SOC code. Because that's the other side of it. If you've
yes.
got a job where it's not just like clear cut what it is, you can't be 100% guaranteed that the department will agree with your code. You can
Yes.
just make your best case for it, if that makes sense. So I kind of see them as two. And like, one is easy to correct, just fix all the documents. And if they don't agree with your SOC code, that's more difficult to kind
We
of to
we
go about it.
always say to people when they're applying to make sure that their CV matches the wording and the description as per the SOC code that they're applying for. So go back to your CV, have a look at how you've worded your experience so that the person looking at it at the end of the day can very clearly see where it matches up and that is what's applicable. Not saying edit your CV to not be truthful. I'm saying make sure that you are aware of what the requirements are on the SOC code and make sure if you match it, you match it. Then there's no issue for you to actually just make sure that the wording aligns so that it's easier for someone to actually see the synergy between them.
Yeah, make it easy for them. I would say make it easy to get approved, make it as easy as possible, you know. And the other thing is, I would often say to people, appeals are kind of, I think, done with in the Department of Enterprise. I don't really think any, as far as I'm aware, there's very rare circumstances where people are putting in appeals. And you can even see on their website, like they haven't processed appeals in the last 7 months.
Yes.
Which is kind of different to the visa system because if you get a visa refusal, that is prejudicial. And even if there's longer appeal processing times, it is usually better to just follow the process through to its conclusion. I find anyway, I suppose each case is different, but the employment permit system, it does just tend to be easier to just reapply because you got 6, 7 weeks and you can just mend whatever was the issue and try again. Whereas the appeal procedure, as the years have gone on, it kind of just seems to have fallen away. And if they're saying it's going to take you 6 months for an answer, I don't know why anyone would want to wait that long, you know?
That's it. And you do get refunded if you
Yes.
if you'd have to if you don't appeal if you actually start a new application. So it's
Yes,
not like the money is lost completely and
exactly.
that's the end of it. But Emma, that's the end of part 2 for us today. Thank you so much for the conversation that we've been having so far. It's absolutely interesting and great to have the insights from your point of view in terms of it. Remember, feel free, Emma's contact details is on all the slides as we go through. Feel free to contact Emma. She really is getting very great feedback, and she has been for many, many years from the members on our Facebook group. So we appreciate the time that she's taking to be here for us so that we can help you and you can help others who may be in the same situation. If you do find that you have anybody who might be interested in moving over, please like, share, subscribe, get the word out there. All these recordings are available for everybody and they're absolutely free to access and they'll always be. So please share this and get people in touch with the right people so that they can get here with as little as possible stress. I'm not going to say no stress because that's just not possible, but as little as possible.
Great.
Thank,
Thank you, Vicky.
thanks, Emma. Speak to you soon for part 3, where we're going to be looking at employment visas if an employment permit is granted.
Bye.
Bye.